around the world. And from CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. Ice is the key in the investigation of Wednesday's crash of an Air Florida jetliner on takeoff from Washington's National Airport. Ice that clogs the Potomac, entombing the plane and more than 60 of the crash's 78 victims. Ice that hampers the efforts of searchers. And before takeoff, an ice buildup investigators believe may have caused the tragedy. Lem Tucker begins our coverage.
This picture was made by a station WDVM TV cameraman at 3:40 p.m. on Wednesday, 15 minutes before the crash. Investigators believe that this is Air Florida Flight 90 waiting in the snow before takeoff. Investigators also say that when the picture is enlarged, they may be able to see whether there is ice on the wings. The question of ice was at the center of the investigation today. Had Air Florida 90, preparing to go to Tampa, sat so long on the runway after its last de-icing that it could no longer perform as an airplane should? Aircraft are finely sculptured machines, so much so that the least little bit of foreign matter in the wrong place can affect their performance, as aerospace engineer Dr. Harold Leibowitz of George Washington University explained to us this afternoon.
By having ice or changing the geometry, you're changing the drag characteristics of that wing, so you will not get the kind of speed that you'd want to become airborne.
There is no question that Air Florida Flight 90 had been de-iced.
The aircraft was de-iced 2 times, I believe, and then went out into the departure line. Aircraft were lined up and took off before and after it, and I think any speculation about ice being the cause is just that. It's speculation at this point.
Investigators do not know how much of the chemical ethylene glycol, which is commonly used to remove ice from planes, was used on Flight 90 on Wednesday.
What we have to find out is what the percentage of the solution was. What they do is they mix the glycol with water, and it can be anywhere from 25 glycol to 75 water, and that solution can change depending on what the weather conditions are, how much they think they need.
That is important since it will determine how long after the plane was de-iced before snow and ice might have built up again. In Wednesday's bad weather, aerospace experts think 20 minutes without de-icing would have been too much for the plane to perform safely. Investigators are also interested in the condition of the runway, just how much slush was on it. That is important because the 737's engines are very close to the ground. Pilots call them vacuum cleaners because they often suck in runway debris. For that very reason, air traffic controllers try to avoid sending 737s on extremely messy runways. And for that reason, at least one 737 may have refused to take off on Wednesday. There is, of course, no shortage of theories as to what went wrong with Air Florida Flight 90, but any hard answers will not come until the flight recorders are recovered. Tonight, they are still in the tail section, still in the Potomac. Lem Tucker, CBS News, Washington.
The sun broke through the Washington overcast this morning for the first time since the accident, but it was like an Arctic scene at the accident site as the bitter cold hung on. Ice was the enemy today, and as the boatmen tried to break it up all around them, they would find reminders of what was below. Here, someone's shoe. There, a piece of one of the plane's life preservers. A piece of clothing. Someone's briefcase. Using electronic probing gear, officials determined that the plane's flight recorders were intact, but with the wind chill down to 0, as the diving teams began to submerge, they soon realized recovering the bodies and the equipment would be even more complicated than they had imagined.
The divers can work under the conditions that exist now. The only parts that the only changes that would interfere totally with the dive would be if the area could not be cleared of the icy conditions.
Along the banks of the Potomac, graders cut roads for the emergency vehicles, and a tent city was put up to house the makeshift morgue and other facilities. Wreckage that was fished out of the river was brought to another spot nearby for cataloging. Not until mid-afternoon were divers able to bring out the first bodies to be recovered today. At a hospital in nearby Arlington, Virginia, it was a happier scene as First Lady Nancy Reagan visited the 5 passengers who survived. They are all in stable condition now and have become the objects of much attention.
The victims have been getting thousands and thousands and thousands of telephone calls. They're coming from family, they're coming from friends, they're coming from people who don't know them, they're coming from people who have also survived air crashes, and just want to let the people know that they care about them, they know what they're going through. They are getting flowers, and yes, they are getting mail as well.
This was one of the most memorable scenes on the day of the tragedy. Capitol Hill clerk Lenny Skutnik saving one of the plane's passengers, Linda Tirado. Today, the woman's father and grandmother came to call at Skutnik's home.
I've got to say something to you,
I was glad to do it.
I just lost the words. I don't know what to say.
All I can say is I was glad to do it. It just happened to be your daughter. I'd probably do it for somebody else's daughter, too.
The recovery effort for those who did not survive continued on into the night as engineers began to raise huge sections of the plane from the water. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Washington.
What's the matter, Gertie? Your denture's slipping up.
When you wear dentures, there's nothing funny about loose spots.
Let Fixodent help fix your loose spots. Fixodent spreads evenly, filling those tiny gaps between dentures and gums with ingredients that give added dimension to holding.
Bertha's back.
She's no problem now. Neither are my loose spots.
Today's Fixodent helps fix loose spots.
You can feel the anticipation in the pit of your stomach because you're about to take the first real drive in your new Firebird Trans Am. Your pulse quickens as the exhilarating 5-liter V8 comes to life. Now the road beckons, and freedom is just a few miles away. The moment you've been waiting for is here. Pontiac. Now the excitement really begins.
A small cylinder containing deadly radioactive material is missing in northwestern Pennsylvania. Police in Oil City say the 10-inch long blue steel cylinder fell off of a truck at a construction site and was picked up by a motorist. Anyone touching the radioactive isotope inside the cylinder would suffer immediate burns and could die within an hour. The device was being used by a New Jersey company to X-ray pipelines. Now, in the discontent of their winter, Americans from the Midwest to the East Coast and the Deep South face what one forecaster calls a rerun of last weekend. Bob McNamara has that story in Chicago.
The new blizzard and bone-chilling cold wave blew into Minnesota from the Dakotas this morning and headed southeast. And as driving visibility thickened in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin, sudden freezing rains piled up cars in Missouri, eastern Kansas, and southeastern Nebraska. From Minnesota to Michigan and in Illinois and Indiana, temperatures are crawling toward predicted overnight lows ranging from 20 below to 45 below. And wind chill factors are being forecast to sound like basketball scores, down to the 80s, 90s, and 100 below in Minnesota, the Dakotas, and Montana. Warned about this second Siberian-style weather assault, shoppers from Sioux City to Chicago grabbed enough groceries to last the weekend or longer.
This should last us for about a week.
You think you're going to need it?
Yes. The 2 children in the house.
I'll get you a blanket, too, since you only have that source of heat, okay?
Okay, praise the Lord.
In St. Louis today, an evangelistic group handed out almost 1,000 space heaters and blankets to inner-city poor people. The giving prompted by predictions St. Louis will see 15 below temperatures and a 70 below wind chill this weekend. Tonight, the cold wave's cutting edge falls short of St. Louis, but it stretches out from western Montana to Wisconsin. And by late tomorrow, as the Arctic front spills across the map, sub-freezing or near-record lows will have the country from Nevada to New York and the Deep South in a deep freeze. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Chicago.
The Labor Department says that wholesale prices rose 0.3% in December. The government says that means inflation at the wholesale level increased just 7% last year, the lowest level since 1977, and down sharply from 1980's 11.8%. Analysts say abundant food supplies, the worldwide oil glut, and the recession all help keep the lid on inflation. The Federal Reserve Board today had grim news about the recession, reporting that industrial production dropped for the 5th straight month in December. The 2.1% decrease was the sharpest since May of 1980. Spokesman for the Teamsters Union and the trucking industry today announced tentative agreement on a new 39-month contract. It covers about 300,000 truckers and other employees. The current pact expires March 31st. Details of the new agreement were not revealed, pending ratification by rank-and-file Teamster members.
Honey, breakfast!
Great coffee.
Yeah, it's Maxwell House Master Blend.
Oh, isn't that supposed to save us money?
Mm-hmm. It only tastes expensive.
Master Blend, a special blend of 100% coffee we make a special way so you can save money. Master Blend, it only tastes expensive.
No A1 steak sauce for my hamburger? Miss, some A1, please. Imagine a great place like this without A1 on the table.
Yeah.
Nothing like it on hamburgers.
You bet.
After all, what is hamburger? Chopped ham, it's chopped steak. What's better on steak than A1? A1 makes hamburgers taste like steak burgers.
I know, that's why I always have it at home.
So, why settle for less when you eat out?
You're right. Miss, some A1, please.
A1 makes hamburgers taste like steak burgers.
Ask for A1 at your favorite restaurant.
Jack Henry Abbott is a career criminal. Since age 12, he had spent most of his life in prisons until novelist Norman Mailer and others helped to get him released. Abbott got out a big-selling book, In the Belly of the Beast. But then he was accused of stabbing to death a young New York City waiter who, ironically, was an aspiring writer with a clean record. Abbott fled. He was captured on the run in Louisiana, but he claimed he was innocent until he appeared on the stand today at his trial. Chris Kelly was in the courtroom.
Prison author Jack Henry Abbott admitted to the killing as if it were the natural act of a man who spent most of his 37 years in jail. Abbott said when he and some friends were in this restaurant last July, he thought a waiter was giving him trouble. They had words, said Abbott, and went outside. Abbott said he thought the waiter, Richard Adan, was coming at him with a weapon. I was screaming at him, said Abbott, and my knife was in him. Then Abbott said Adan told him, "You didn't have to kill me." A strange noise was coming up through his throat. There was a river of blood. Then Abbott described Adan's death. He dropped to his knees, his arms dropped to his side, and he went directly on his face. I had to kill him. Adan's family sobbed quietly in the courtroom as they heard the grisly details. Author Norman Mailer, who was instrumental in getting Abbott released from prison, sat in silence. The killing came as Abbott's published prison memoirs were receiving critical literary acclaim. Included in the book were letters Abbott wrote to Mailer detailing life behind bars. In his courtroom confession, Abbott said the killing was a tragic misunderstanding. He broke down and wept, muttering, "I'm at your mercy." And when he said he did not intend to kill Adan, Adan's father-in-law screamed, "Like in the book, you intended it, you scum. You too, Mailer." Shrieking obscenities, Henry Howard was forced out of the courtroom. The judge banned Adan's relatives from the rest of the trial and will rule Monday whether their outburst so prejudiced the jury as to warrant a mistrial. And following the uproar and drama, Norman Mailer kept his silence as he left the courtroom. Chris Kelly, CBS News, New York.
In Las Vegas today, a jury found former busboy Philip Klein guilty of murder and arson in last February's Las Vegas Hilton fire. That blaze killed 8 people, injured 200 others. Officials say Klein, 24, faces a possible death penalty or life in prison. The jury will begin the penalty phase of the trial Wednesday. A Canadian court in Vancouver, British Columbia, convicted Clifford Olson yesterday of stabbing, beating, or strangling to death 11 young people aged 9 to 18. The bodies of the victims were found last summer by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, but only with Olson's help. It was revealed today that Olson charged the police about $10,000 per body to lead authorities to the graves. The money was paid into a trust fund for Olson's wife and small son. More on this story from Jerry Thompson of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Even though the RCMP considered Olson their prime suspect for several weeks before the arrest, they could not make a solid case without the victims' bodies. When the 42-year-old unemployed construction worker offered to tell where the 11 children were buried, police agreed to pay for the information.
Well, I think you should know that there was a sum of money paid to someone associated with Olson in connection with information received in this case back in August.
How much money?
Well, the amount of money, broadly speaking, involved was $100,000.
That revelation has touched off a storm of angry reaction here in Vancouver. Even Olson's own defense lawyer thought it was wrong.
Well, this is the first time that I'm aware of in Canadian history where an accused, as opposed to an informant, has been paid monies. I think it's politically insane, and I personally do not approve of it.
That's the most difficult decision I've ever had to make in my life.
Alan Williams, the Attorney General for British Columbia, says the police set up the deal, but he approved it. Williams insists that no precedent has been set, that the Olson murders are a unique case that will not likely be repeated. Jerry Thompson for CBS News, Vancouver.
For months, polls have been indicating that New York's Democratic Governor Hugh Carey would have a difficult, if not impossible, fight for a third term. Today, Carey announced that he would not try for it. Carey is 62. He recently remarried after several years as a widower. His aides and family members say he wants more time for his personal life. Red Smith died today in Stamford, Connecticut after a brief illness. 76, he was a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Times and widely acknowledged to be the best-known sports writer of his generation. He won countless awards in a newspaper career that began with the Milwaukee Sentinel in 1927 and flowered with the New York Herald Tribune from 1945 through 1968.
All right, this is Smith Column Sports. Ahead
Red Smith wrote in a prose style that was uncommonly pure, witty, and informed. So much so that readers with no interest in sports, but with an interest in good writing, often turned to his column before reading anything else in the newspaper. His style seemed so effortless. But he once said writing a column is the easiest job in the world. All you have to do is open a vein and bleed it out, drop by drop. Last year, Red Smith talked about his work with Morley Safer on 60 Minutes.
I've always tried to remember that these were games that little boys can play. Hell, I set out to make a living, not to make a contribution. But maybe, like anybody else who writes for the papers, I make some small contribution to what? The gaiety of the nations?
Polydent presents Martha Ray, TV star, denture wearer.
You know, when I clown in front of that camera, this big smile needs something extra. Extra strength Polydent Green. It gets my dentures sparkling clean. Watch, tough lab stains. Now, extra strength Polydent. It's fantastic. Gets tough stains clean, even in between. So take it from a big mouth. Extra strength Polydent Green gets tough stains clean.
Colds and flu can trigger bronchial asthma attacks. Be prepared with Primatene Mist. Primatene, the fastest type relief known for occasional attacks, restores free breathing in as fast as 15 seconds. Or to keep breathing freely for hours, Primatene tablets. In the lungs, Primatene opens clogged breathing tubes, relaxes bronchial spasms, restores free breathing. Primatene Mist, the fastest type relief known. Primatene tablets contains the asthma reliever doctors recommend most.
I have a dream. Could it have been more than 18 years ago? The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and one of the largest crowds ever assembled in Washington. Today, on what would have been Dr. King's 53rd birthday, some 8,000 people relive that historic event on the Washington Mall. And Bill Moyers, in his commentary tonight, also remembers.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
It didn't seem so radical a speech, but the next day a top official of the FBI called it demagogic.
and said Martin Luther King Jr. would be, quote, the most dangerous Negro of the future.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. We're going to get free. We're going to get free.
He would be dangerous, all right, but not as the FBI reckoned. He would be dangerous because he would use America's own ideals to change reality.
Because I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
I was in the crowd that day and heard him say that freedom is everyone's cause. Only later would you realize the heresy this inspired. For in a society dependent upon a servant class, it is dangerous to demand not only respect for equality, but action to achieve it. Lincoln had done so a century earlier and been martyred. Now King would push the moral logic of America's revolution to its ultimate implication and be martyred too. The fateful step came when he denounced the war in Vietnam. Near the end of his life, he saw the issue to be not just black and white, but rich and poor, war and peace. The war must stop, he said. It is stealing from America's social needs. We cannot fight the war in Vietnam, he said, and win the war against poverty at home.
A few years ago, it seemed as if there was a real promise of hope for the poor, both black and white, through the poverty program. Then came the build-up in Vietnam, and I watched this program broken and eviscerated, as if it was some idle political plaything of a society gone mad on war. And I knew that America would never invest the necessary funds or energies in rehabilitation of its poor, so long as adventures like Vietnam continued to draw men and skills and money like some demonic destructive suction tube.
He was now more than ever the outsider. White segregationist he had already challenged. Now even liberals criticized him. He had attacked the idea of an imperial state. He had linked inequality to militarism. He had moved beyond civil rights to human rights. Moral equality, he said, requires economic justice. The preacher had become the prophet, and on the mountaintop he had discovered a very old truth, that without justice, there is for the poor only disruption and suffering. He was indeed dangerous. We cannot know what course Martin Luther King might have taken if he had lived, but for sure he would have been appalled by the growing inequality between rich and poor. He would have been angry at reports from Washington that military spending may cost another $750 billion over the $1.5 trillion already planned for the next 5 years. And he would have been filled with both sorrow and rage at the sight this week of thousands of poor people lined up for hours in the January cold of the nation's capital to wait for a few pounds of surplus government cheese. His murder cost us more than his life. It cost us his voice and his conscience.
LaChoy wants to remind you it's time for a holiday that you can celebrate with gifts like Christmas, with decorations like a birthday party, and firecrackers like the 4th of July. It's Chinese New Year. Time to enjoy crispy LaChoy egg rolls and delicious LaChoy chow mein, served with LaChoy chow mein noodles and soy sauce. All featured at your grocer's now.
LaChoy makes Chinese food. Swing American.
Welcome to TV Land. You name it, we got it. And if we don't got it, we can get it. Get it?
I think so. We'd like to see a Curtis Mathis.
Forget it. I can't get it.
I'm Curtis Mathis. You can buy most TVs just about anywhere, but you can only get a Curtis Mathis from someone qualified to sell and service it, a Curtis Mathis dealer. That makes us a little harder to find, but well worth the effort.
Curtis Mathis, the most expensive television in America, and worth it.
The hardline newspaper of the Polish Army called today for a sweeping purge to weed out all support of the Solidarity Union and those who would become a Trojan horse for the opposition. Among the Army's suggested targets, the Communist Party, the government, educators, students, and journalists. Since it is the military that is ruling Poland now, indications are strong that such a purge will occur. It has been proven time and again that very little stands in the way of what is called progress. For more than 3/4 of a century before the United States was born, fishmongers in London peddled their wares at the Billingsgate Market on the River Thames in the shadow of London Bridge. But time and progress march on, as John Blackstone explains.
In the hours before dawn, when fish are bought and sold, the years seem not to have passed at all. Billingsgate in the heart of London has been Britain's main fish market since 1699. But as far back as 1,000 years ago, in Roman times, fish was sold here. The Billingsgate Market Hall was constructed in the reign of Queen Victoria, when even wholesale fish markets were objects of architectural grandeur.
And are you saying my cod are too small for you?
This was the last full morning of selling at the ancient market. The fish traders are about to be moved from the center of London to the suburbs. Their new market will be bigger, more efficient, and more convenient. But it won't be the same.
Well, because my father was here, my grandfather was here, my grandfather before them was all fish porters. And it goes through the centuries, after 1,000 years.
Even at Billingsgate, though, the fish business has been changing. When Sandy Gibbs started working here 50 years ago, he sold mainly halibut, herring, and cod. Not anymore.
I don't deal in the ordinary wet fish. I just deal in the, exotic stuff. Lobster tails, frog's legs, escargots, scallops, king prawns, everything that comes from somewhere where we have to get it from a long way. Expensive.
Next week, London's fish dealers will make their biggest break with tradition when they start business in new quarters. Their old market building is to be converted to offices and stores. The landmark will be saved. But the early morning mist in the cobbled streets around Billingsgate will settle, undisturbed by the commerce of fish. John Blackstone, CBS News, London.
And that's the CBS Evening News for this Friday. Bob Schieffer will be here tomorrow. Dan Rather reporting from New York and hoping you'll have a good weekend.
There are times when life seems oh so cold, but there's always time to warm your heart. A silhouette time, travel on words of love. It's your own special time, so sit back and relax with Silhouette Romance.
Each month there are 6 new Silhouette romances, and now for teenagers, new First Love from Silhouette.
Silhouette Romance.
Location, a major metropolitan laboratory. We're about to reveal how Digel gives you more than just antacid relief by actually cutting the top off a Digel tablet. Results. This illustrates, without its top layer, Digel consumes excess heartburn-producing acid. What's more, observe as we dramatize the gas-calming action of the simethicone in Digel. Digel has this extra layer for extra relief. Conclusion, when you need extra relief, demand Digel relief.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Tomorrow, John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors, Yvonne Lindell, Vitas Gerolaitis, and Guillermo Vilas are among those competing at the Grand Prix Masters Tennis Tournament. Tomorrow on CBS Sports.
This is CBS.
This man was arrested today by Metro Police, who say he is the South Nashville rapist, responsible for more than 20 rapes in that part of town. That story and more news coming up next on Eyewitness News.
From Television 5, this is Eyewitness News, weather, and sports.
Good evening, everyone. Metro Police have arrested a man they say is the South Nashville rapist.